the probably most return guest of the entire show, and one of my personal favorite podcasters. Please welcome back to the show, Charlie Robinson.
Thank
How's it
you.
going today, man?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, we've done this. We've been doing this. We've been talking about this stuff for a while. And it feels like, I don't want to jinx anything, but it feels like there's a huge segment of the normie population that's finally starting to ask questions about things. They know about Jeffrey Epstein. They don't know everything about Jeffrey Epstein. They just know that there's a guy, know what he looks like. They know he's kind of like a scumbag, rich guy scumbag pimp with a airplane in an island. And it's got some real good, juicy Hollywood-ish type stuff to it. And I'm really glad people are talking about this. But there's so much more to this guy. I mean, this guy was involved in crazy amounts of deep state activities over 40 years. And so I'm excited. We're gonna get weird and talk about some Epstein tonight.
Super excited
Among
about
other
this one,
things,
man.
but I mean,
This was, of course, one of the reasons why usually, when we end up setting up the show, it's kind of like a recap of all the current events going on. A little bit different this time, of course. We actually have kind of an idea that we wanted to get into. And especially with this one, this is one of those ones I wanted to hit because, as you mentioned, everybody's really is talking about it. It was one of those things that it was mainly like a right wing that was watching it type thing. Now it's getting
yeah.
to the point where left wing is watching it, everybody's watching it. But like you mentioned, they're only getting half of the narrative on this thing. So the whole reason why I want to have you on, man, I haven't heard anybody that's dived into this as much as you have and exposed the whole back end of this whole thing. Because of course they're going to keep it under the facade of simply just, this guy, of course, was a pedophile. This guy was, touching underage girls. And of course that's bad enough for most people, but there's a deeper aspect to it, man. So I'm excited to get into this one.
Yeah, I guess on the one hand, I'm happy that people are recognizing that there are guys like Jeffrey Epstein that exist out there. There's always been rich scumbags. That I'm not talking about that. This is a guy. He's more than that. He's an operator. He's part of a big network. He's part of intelligence. He belongs to intelligence. That's how Alex Acosta described him.
There was a
And when you
recent thing that came out too that was saying I saw it pretty much got swept under the rug that I think what was it, an FBI informant actually came out and mentioned that he was an FBI informant. Like there was some type of declassified documents that came out that was actually saying that for sure.
Epstein has cooperated with a variety of agencies, but he didn't do well with local law enforcement. And local law enforcement doesn't like being trumped by, no pun intended, trumped, but by uh, intelligence. And so they had to put it on the show and put him in jail in this cushy deal. And people sort of knew him as this procurer of young girls for back massages and hand jobs and things like that, but what you find is that he's running an operation. He's running a sexual blackmail entrapment operation, and it's well organized, and it's multi-jurisdictional, and and you have to ask questions about who is he working for, and that leads to some answers that people uh don't aren't most people in our circle understand. I think the general public doesn't understand what a double agent is. Epstein worked for Israel and the United States. That's provable. I mean, he didn't work for Mossad. He worked for a company. He worked for an outfit called Amon, which is Israeli military intelligence. It's a group like a sister group of Mossad, but it's not them. So, and running all kinds of Ponzi schemes, uh, arms, partnering on buying airline companies, Southern Air Transport, which was Air America, which was the airline that the CIA was using to run drugs out of Vietnam and Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War. I mean, the CIA owned it, and then they sold it to Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein. You know, I mean, you're just like crazy. It's like I just want to grab people and go like, "Oh, come for the island escapades." You know, if you think that's juicy, like come, you know. But wait until I tell you what he's doing in Zorro Ranch. You know what I mean? Like down in the basement, in the bunkers, or you know.
It's a matter of controlling the narrative. You know, they definitely see all of the darker aspects of what he was doing, doing all of these dealings as the worst aspect of what he was doing. So of course what they wanted to bring to the forefront was the trafficking of women, because that's something that everybody can say, all right, that's the bad guy, that's the enemy. And that's
Yep.
usually enough for a lot of people. Like that's one of the main things that, everybody has in their mind that we need to shut down. But they have to can take into consideration that there's a lot of really strong people that are involved in this stuff. So of course they're going to kick somebody off every once in a while in order to have a figurehead for everybody to pass the blame onto. Because at this point, most people are looking at Epstein, they're looking at Ghislaine Maxwell, but they're not looking at any of the people that go up and beyond that. I mean, of
Right.
course, people in our circle are, but the average person are just now somehow, what, 5, 6 years after everybody else got the message, are actually paying attention to the Epstein files now. And honestly, I mean, most of the interest in that, I think, from the left is in mainly just because they want to figure out if Trump's involved in it, because of course they want to be able to say that's the
Oh
bad
yeah.
guy, that's the bad guy too. But regardless, I mean, I'm just happy at the fact that people are actually paying attention to that as a whole, because I feel like that's one of those first spots that you can start really chiseling at to really start breaking down the system.
I totally agree. Once you know that Jeffrey Epstein exists, then you go, "Hey, let me ask you a question. Do you think what would a Jeffrey Epstein operation look like if it were operating in broad daylight? But not instead of being in Palm Beach, it was happening in Beverly Hills. What would you do if I told you that the Playboy Mansion was a gigantic entrapment operation?" And people would go, "Holy shit. Never even occurred to me."
Think about all the cameras, think about all the underage girls. And dude, just throwing it in, man. All the like I don't get me wrong, I love like 80s metal and stuff like that, but think about how many of the 80s bands would talk about going to the Playboy Mansion and having relations with underage girls. And again, all that stuff's recorded. It's a blackmail entrapment organization, but I wonder if it's one of those aspects that they would sing about it in their song, so that at least if people brought it up later on, they could say, "Hey, we were talking about this the whole time." Plausible deniability.
Yep. You want me to wear spandex? Hey, I got you on video in the grotto at the Playboy Mansion. You'll wear these fucking spandex if I tell you to. Nikki
Dude, and he
Six.
played it right, man. He got to stay alive for his whole life, and stuff didn't really start. I mean, even now, there really isn't much coming out. Like, there's a couple
No.
of girls here and there that talked about a couple bad experiences they've had, but he really had it locked down. He was, I feel like, one of the first in our time that was really running that type of operation, like to the fine pointee of where it needed to be, which obviously not a good thing, but like, imagine if he would have been one of the people that, had to get arrested and be like, "Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am?" He probably would have had the same fate as Epstein. But I feel like that's half of what doomed Epstein, was his cocky ego involved with all this stuff.
He became you don't need Epstein anymore. If you want to get the goods on somebody, you can make it look like, you used to have to get them like, with a 9-year-old in their bed passed out. Now you just, fake it. Yeah, I mean, like it's if you by the way, if you do get them in that situation and actually get them on tape, then they know what they've done and they know that they're caught and that's part of it. But even if you don't, you can still make it look like they did and destroy their reputation and make them fight that or something like so. You, the Epstein's, I mean, he's expendable, and he's a loose end too because he knows about all the scams, and and not just he walked this line between legitimacy and illegitimacy because on the one hand, he's in jail for tra- sex traffic sex trafficking a minor, and um and at the same time, he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. These are extremely powerful globalist organizations. And he's a member of both of them for like 15 years. So this isn't some accidental guy. This isn't some pimp. This isn't some rich Israeli abrasive asshole pedophile who likes 14-year-old girls to rub his back. This dude was connected to royalty. I mean, he's connected to Ghislaine Maxwell. Her connections into the royal family opened up massive doors for him. Her father was a spy for the British Empire. And that goes a long way towards opening doors. He was also a Mossad spy. And they murdered him, and then they gave him a state funeral because that's how they do it. So like the idea that like he just happens to have an island or just happens to have a Lolita Express airplane and and have a townhome in the Upper East Side that's directly connected to Howard Lutnick's. Like this. They share a common wall. Next door neighbors with Howard Lutnick, Trump's commerce secretary. And so, there's too many coincidences, there's too many overlapping networks, and you just, the more you look at him, the more you realize this guy was all over the place. And the least talked about, maybe most diabolical component is what he was getting into with the population scientists. Why he was financing Martin Nowak at Harvard with $30 million for evolutionary dynamics, population dynamics, evolutionary game theory. What happens when you create a scenario and you inject a variable into the population like COVID and then add this and do that, and why is he having all these super smart physicists hanging out with him, and what is he working on at Zorro Ranch? And it's like you go, okay, the ironic thing about this is that you hear all these things that he's into and you go, he must just be off the charts smart. But what you kind of heard was that he was kind of a dumb fuck, actually. He didn't really know much. Like the physics stuff was way over his head, but he liked to pretend like he understood it. But all the physicists that they talked to, they go, "What was your experience with Epstein?" They're like, "Great, had a big place, big shot guy, had us come in, talk about physics, fun with physics was the thing, PHUN, fun with PHY physics, get it, haha, scientist humor, fun with physics, set up by Ghislaine Maxwell's sister's husband. So you'd have all these scientists over and what are you working on? What are you working on? Transhumanism? Why you have all these fucking population guys all around you? Are you trying to lower the population? Are you trying to raise the population? Because on the one hand, he's got something going on in New Mexico underground under Zorro Ranch that is some sort of bizarre breeding factory, right? So there's that. but he is involved in eugenics. And that is depopulation. So I think he wants to get rid of a certain type of people. He wants to repopulate the world with his type, his sperm. I mean, he was on the record talking about that.
Which would
And
explain the
which is
breeding facilities at that point.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was like the sperm donor for like the breeding facilities, and he was, I don't know. I mean, it gets very unusual. But
I mean, that could even start to kind of explain even the other aspect of things. Is I mean, this is kind of a hard way to know which way to go. Was he trying to collect this information for the sake of some government organization, or was he also trying to collect this blackmail for the sake of maybe starting to try to push some of these new genetic ideas? Because I mean, if you have connections, you have power, and even just simply having somebody on the flight logs. This is something I recently discussed on a show too. Doesn't even mean that any of these people were involved in anything, but just because of the fact that they're now on the flight logs, people are going to assume that they're involved. So now you're going to have people that may have just been involved in this new Genesis stuff, which, and I'm not saying that that's any better or anything like that, but they were involved in this and not involved in the sex trafficking, but now they're protecting him and protecting that list because they don't want to be involved with the sex trafficking aspect of things. So again, is it a matter of using this stuff for his own power, or is he doing both at the same time? I mean, triple agent at that point, right?
yeah. I mean, is he spying on behalf of Israeli intelligence? Yes. Is he spying on behalf of American intelligence? Yes. But who does he work for? He works for billionaire Jews.
Shocker.
That's who he
The
works for.
typical
That's
the
who he
typical group.
reports to. He is a 500 millionaire Jew himself, right? And he works for a very powerful group. Les Wexner, one of the guys, head of one of the co-founders of the mega group, the Bronfmans, powerful Zionist billionaire family, Seagrams out of Canada. And these groups, the mega group is a known, you're required. This isn't me talking about it. This is their requirements. It's like you got to be a billionaire and you got to be a Jewish Zionist. And so it's
And
like Steven Spielberg and Barry Steinhardt, and I mean just a bunch of uh, Max Lender. I wish I had the list in front of me, but it's just
as
a
they
bunch
may
of
say, no goyim allowed club.
yeah, and Epstein was a guy who was connected to them. He was connected to bankers. He was running. He was washing money for powerful people. He's and then Ghislaine Maxwell's family. Like her sister Christine Maxwell runs a company called Chiliad. Chiliad is a data mining tech company. And they work with the FBI's counterterrorism data warehouse. So imagine this just for 1 second. Ghislaine Maxwell, who is in prison right now, her sister's company manages the FBI's counterterrorism data.
At a certain point, all you can really do is just laugh at this stuff, because when you actually see it in front of you on paper, you just see the absolute ridiculousness of this stuff.
her husband is a guy named Roger Molina. Roger Molina's name doesn't ring a bell to most people. Roger Molina's dad was a guy named Frank Molina, and Frank Molina started the Jet Propulsion Laboratory with Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, and L. Ron Hubbard.
The Suicide Crew. They're the Suicide Squad.
Yep. Frank Molina, one of the guys from the Suicide Squad, his son married Ghislaine Maxwell's sister.
The even weirder aspect of that, if you want to get into the, more occult beliefs of some of these elites too, that group particularly was extremely into sex magic. So
yeah,
you kind of correlate that with a lot of the stuff that they were doing. And is it, a matter of they were trying to traffic, or did they actually think that there was something to the concept of, ritual sex magic? Were they using these people for sex magic as part of just another facade to this whole thing?
Fuck. I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, I just it's just one of those things where it's not accidental. They're all it's not even necessarily all that surprising, right? Like, I guess if you're a rich, powerful person, you're going to hang out with other rich, powerful people. If I guess I know a lot of the people in the alternative media podcast work because I just kind of work in that industry. So maybe it makes sense. But like, I guess if you're like a blood drinking Satanist, you just hang out with other blood drinking Satanists, right? Like Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard, and you find that the families are all intermingled in with one. But I just keep coming across these overlaps, and I just go, "Are you really honestly? Are you kidding me?" Ghislaine Maxwell has another sister, Isabel Maxwell. She's Christine Maxwell's twin sister. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. Ghislaine Maxwell actually has two sisters. They're twins. One I just talked about, who runs Chiliad, the data mining company. The other one, Isabel Maxwell, is the head of technology at the World Economic Forum.
Talk about dabbling all in the same
they're
pool.
twin sisters. I mean, I feel like I'm on drugs half the time when I see this stuff. I just go, really? Are you fucking with me? Like, really? Twins? Oh, twins, really? What else is she going to be in charge of? Well, her emphasis is actually the fourth industrial revolution. And for those who don't know, the fourth industrial revolution, according to the World Economic Forum, is the blending of man with machine into something known as transhumanism. And the sales pitch is transhumanism. That's what you're going to be hearing. That's what we've been hearing. The thing is, nobody really asks them to define the term. And I think a lot of people assume it means, on the good side, robot arm. If I lost my arm in a car accident, I get a robot arm, right? On the bad side, brain chips, right? Not great. But the truth is, in 1957, Julian Huxley, the brother of Aldous Huxley, the guy who wrote Brave New World, Julian Huxley was the head of the British Eugenics Society, and they were having a ton of bad public relations. And so he rebranded them, and he chose a different name for eugenics. He wanted to pick a futuristic name, and the name he came up with was transhumanism. So when these people are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, when Isabel Maxwell is the head of technology at the World Economic Forum, her emphasis is the fourth industrial revolution. And I know that that means transhumanism. And I know that transhumanism actually means eugenics. Then we have a problem here. And people need to get straight on what transhumanism is, because it's not what they think it is. It's not you're not $6 million man. It's not enhancements. It's none of that shit. It's depopulation disguised as technological upgrades. And I mean, just think about like how buggy and wonky a first generation or second or third generation laptop is, or whatever. Now implant that in your brain.
Or any
You
new
know what I
model, for
mean?
that being said. You got to give it a year before you upgrade to the new model of anything. Like,
You get caught in a subscription loop. You can't get out of it. They're beaming you with ads. I mean, like, we can kind of laugh about it because it's crazy and all, but like, really, like, the implications of this are terrifying, and they're going to be selling this, and this is why I worry this all ties into Epstein. I mean, we've got Epstein involved in evolutionary dynamics, and financing that with $30 million is not nothing. He like financed this dude at Harvard, like built out the whole center for this guy Martin Nowak. And the guy was disgraced, had to like leave, well, he got suspended from Harvard for 2 years. I think he still got paid or something, but he was like semi disgraced. Should be disgraced, but of course he works at Harvard, and you can't shame people who have no shame. So I, look, I get worried when I know what transhumanism means, and I see a Maxwell sister pushing it, knowing that her sister's in a prison cell for trafficking children with Epstein, who was also working on transhumanism shit. Like, it's bad enough that they're trafficking the kids. They're also trying to depopulate everybody at the same time as well, which is,
That kind of brings in another aspect too of these kids. Like, are they using them possibly as like test subjects for some of this stuff? Because assumably, with like brain chips, for example, it's gonna be one of those things where it's another thing that goes way beyond what you think it would be. Meaning that they're already able to project signals, frequencies at you, different things that make you feel different ways. Like, there's patents for different technology like this.
yeah.
If you actually have something that's connected neurologically into your brain, essentially you're just unlocking the key where any signal, anything that they want to send in, they could possibly send in. And I'm not saying some scary idea about like, oh, they're going to completely switch the way that your brain works, but just like little slight things that they can start trying to put in your mind that'll start making you feel this way or feel that way. Just really, really subtle subliminal things. And that's essentially my biggest fear with this thing. Or even on the flip side of it, say you're not paying for your subscription, what happens then? Do you get a bug? Are you not able to function correctly? Are you running at half speed? Is there a bunch of ads that are going to start popping up or something in somewhere? Like, you got to think of like the after effect of all this stuff too. Like, it's not just going to be this pristine running model. Like, they are going to utilize this for the sake of control, and also on the other side for the sake of advertisement and manipulation to sell products.
Well, I'm going to really freak you out now, because one of the things that Epstein was involved with was also robotics. Do you remember Sophia the robot in
Oh yeah,
Saudi
that
Arabia?
horrifying ass thing.
Yeah, yeah, and got citizenship, and you could see like kind of like the back circuitry of her head, and it was like, oh, Sophia the robot, and everyone kind of like
Like all the light
laughed,
jokes about ending humans, like, oh, but I'm just making jokes. Like, I don't know if somebody
right?
programmed that in, but horrifying all the same.
Yeah. Well, so the same guy who did that, Ben Gertzel, took $6.5 million from Epstein to build the Little Sophia. And the Little Sophia is about 18 inches tall, and it's an emotional support doll for girls ages 8 and up. And it is wired with cameras and microphones and geotagged. And it's like a nice little perfect menu for pedophiles to look and see what kind of kid they can go get, and they'll know exactly where it is because it's pinging. And it's going to tell, it's going to know if the little girl is in there crying because daddy was mean to her or whatever. And it's
Taking
just going to
pictures
be
constantly when she's in moments where, I mean, creating a database essentially for even the child,
data
even
mining
before they
this kid.
decide to go and choose the child.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, I mean, you, like, my mind just instantly goes to the worst place. If, I don't know, name a reputable toy maker. I don't know. Hasbro.
Hasbro, Mattel,
Mattel. If Mattel made this, I'd go, pretty
put that in the new
dystopian
Barbie.
and creepy. Not interested. But when Jeffrey fucking Epstein is building this, you have to ask questions. You know what I mean? Like you have to go like, this isn't, he's not getting into the toy business. You know what I mean? He's not interested in making money selling toys. He's got hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's like, what is he doing with these dolls? What's what's this weirdo Ben Gertzel doing too? He's got ties to all kinds of crazy shit. So like
It makes you wonder if this plan's still currently in motion because you're seeing a lot, I'm sure, with a lot of these like emotional support AIs that adults are talking to. But in order to normalize that concept where somebody would even suggest doing it for their child, of course, you have to normalize it for them first. So even beyond Epstein, I mean, it seems like with a lot of these people, they're just a moving cog within the system. You know, the cog gets messed up, you just replace the cog and the machine continues working. I feel like this is one of those things that beyond Epstein, it's still kicked into action. And again, you have to normalize it with the adults first. And then I would not be surprised if the next generation is here's some therapy help for your kid. It can be your friend. It can hang out with your kid at home. It can go anywhere with your kid.
well, let me tell you what Ben Gertzel is also working on. He's the chief scientist at Hanson Robotics, CEO of SingularityNet. And what they're doing is they're putting AI brains on the blockchain. And he also runs something called OpenCog Foundation. It's for the AI community. So he's the guy building the pedophile doll with Jeffrey Epstein. Is also involved with putting artificial intelligence brains on the blockchain. I don't know what that means. Not going to pretend to know what that means. But I'm assuming Ben Gertzel knows what that means. But these guys that are hanging around Epstein, these scientist guys, are not like the let's cure cancer type of scientist guys. These are the creepy AI, like AI end of the world cult like technocrat lunatic guys.
The AI on the blockchain, my assumption with that would be the whole blockchain concept is that it exists in multiple locations. So AI on the blockchain would essentially, I'm assuming, mean that they're creating an AI that if you delete the main system, it's still existing in multiple places. So it's talking about this artificial intelligence that you could probably create a database, a storage base with that exists in multiple locations. So it can't be strictly like put into one location where it could be deleted or gotten rid of theoretically. I'm assuming that's the assumption. If they're trying to continue on with this AI concept, you know, you want to create a system that essentially can't be shut down. So that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to explain through this, but just in a less frightening sounding way, creating Skynet.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Congratulations.
I think we've seen that movie. We know how that one turns out.
Yeah. I mean, he had Epstein had a guy named Marvin Minsky around him, MIT scientist. This guy who is being heralded as one of the creators of AI, Marvin Minsky, hanging out with Epstein. So I don't know. I just, you know, I like we can be dismissive of this if we choose to, but like I I've decided that I'm going to pay attention to it because Epstein was paying attention to it. So there's something here. He was focusing quite a bit of his, you know, his later years on this stuff.
I mean, talking about kicking stuff up too, just to kind of continue on with this whole idea about like New Genesis and how it completely just went under a new facade. You know, when situations happen, I try to like sit back and kind of see what the full picture of it is. And it seems like I think we talked about this on the last show. There's this like huge rise of everybody just being individually about their own race. You know, like, you know, the whites don't want the blacks over here. They don't want the Mexicans over here. They don't want this over here. And, you know, I'm not going to say that all these races can necessarily blend together. I kind of feel like everybody kind of has different sets of morals. So it seems like you kind of live amongst your own group for the most part. But
Yeah.
if you build up enough hatred between these groups, where these groups essentially start seeing one as superior to the other, then you start tricking people into starting to believe these new Genesis concepts and essentially doing half the battle for you. Because if you have all the people in this country that are saying, we don't want any of the Latino people anymore, and you get them to a point where they're escalated, where they start wanting to eliminate those people, then essentially you can push people into these new Genesis concepts without even having to touch the button. You can just push people into it.
You mean like what's happening right now, where you've got half of America angry and ready to like deport 50 million people?
You got Canada that nonstop is just Indian, Indian, Indian. You got the UK that's just talking about all these people, and you got little girls running around with like tomahawks and
Yeah.
knives trying to defend themselves against these people over there. Like at a certain point, putting these violent people in these places, like obviously for people that have been diving into this, like this stuff is intentional, but for people looking at it from the other side, it's like at a certain point you have to expect that some of this stuff is intentional, because how would they have made it through in the first place unless some of these places were purposely intended to start putting little aspects in people's mind, like what happened with the Venezuelan stuff in Colorado where they were taking over these hotels supposedly. I mean, it
Right.
seems like it came and went overnight, but it's put that idea in people's minds that, if you have these people in your neighborhood, they're going to start a cartel in your neighborhood. So then you're also starting this movement where everybody's just slowly starting to push everybody out as part of the group to the point where, they feel like they need to be violent because they're dealing with the cartel at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here. I'm in outside of Denver. I watched that craziness happen, and it feels um well, I know for a fact. I was going to say it feels like it's being made to happen. It is being made to happen. I know that for a fact that it's being made to happen. It so the question is why, I guess. Like what they they want us to react. I feel like I'm always very suspicious when I watch it, like when I look at my feed on X or something, or whatever I'm getting shown. I was very suspicious that I'm being manipulated. You know what I mean? My feed shows me a lot of like 5 black guys beating up 1 white guy videos for some reason. Like my phone wants me to hate black people, 100%. And and because I'm like mindful of this, it doesn't. I am of the belief that it doesn't impact me. Uh, Because I'm specifically aware and, like, looking at it, but had I not been paying attention, like, I just noticed there's a pattern. I was like, "Damn, I'm seeing, like, every other video is, like, somebody getting their ass kicked." And, eh so, anyway, I feel like, y I feel like I was getting manipulated, you know? Do you feel like do you ever catch that sometimes where, like, you go, um like you just catch like out of of all the things that you could come up on your feed, they just hammer you with some narrative like all
Oh
like
my God. I get a lot of the ones where it's Hitler speeches translated to English and it's
oh,
trying to
you do
show.
you? I don't
Yeah,
get those.
I get a
Oh,
lot of
now I
those where it's
will.
like, I
Now
was
my
never
phone's
intending to
listening.
bomb Poland. I wasn't planning on doing this, blah, 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 blah. I get a lot of that stuff, dude. Like, and I think it's one of
That's
those things that
funny.
it's like I fit the demographic, meaning that, I'm a white male within, it's in my
You're a
20s
white
slash 30s.
nationalist.
So of course it tries to push that agenda towards me, where I get a lot of that stuff too, or like you said, where it's a lot of like racial violence. But then in
Yeah.
between that, it's littered with like, oh, look how nice Russia is. Look at this cathedral they just built in Russia. And then the next one is all this old Nazi stuff where it's like the Nazi jokes, like somebody starts talking about politics and I've had a couple beers deep, and then it has like the guy from, American History X sitting there and stuff. Just a lot of like that type of propaganda where
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
pushing
I get that.
people
I
that are
get
in
some of
that
that.
age group to it's psychologically brainwashing people to start believing in this like white nationalist concept.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the stuff I get shown is just it's just funny. You know what I mean? And like because I have a really dark sense of humor. And I love racist jokes. You know what I mean? I
Dude, I
love
get
I
on all
love
the
them.
Jewish ones I get on my feed, like that some of those are really, really
I
funny. I'm sorry,
I
but they're
I
funny.
appreciate, I but as a honky myself, we first and foremost, we always made fun of ourselves on 2 different occasions. Our Halloween costumes, we had professionally made basketball jerseys that said the Honkies on it, and we had, like, short shorts, and we went out as a whole team on 2 different well, it was broken up over 2 times over 3 years, uh, and got different jerseys made both times, and just had a really you gotta make fun of yourself, you know, so I can laugh at the absurdity of it all, but, like, it's a lot.
Dude, you want to talk about some other psychological brainwashing? I brought this up on on a semi-recent show, but I definitely want to get your perspective on this one because actually it might end up tying into the point five that we're going to end up doing. But have
Okay.
you seen this whole conspiracy about people talking about all of the different countries that surround Israel having the colors of the four horsemen?
No.
You haven't seen
No.
that whole conspiracy? Let me at least see if I can bring
Uh-uh.
this one up because I was looking this up yesterday. So let's see. I got to look through my history here. So basically, there, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's Kuwait, the United, or I just want let me bring them up so I can have them all specifically. But I'll kind of lay out this
It
idea.
would be Egypt,
Yeah, Egypt was one of them too. I know I literally had like a full picture map of this up yesterday because I was
Syria.
looking this up. Syria's one. Uh, let's see. How do I don't even remember how I looked this up yesterday. Um,
Jordan.
did you find a way to look it up?
No. Greater Israel Project.
See, I know. Let's see. See if I can find the picture that I had up yesterday because it had some dates on it that I found kind of interesting. I guess I'll just try to paraphrase this one up so I don't waste too much time looking for it. But so there's this conspiracy theory going around that's talking about the whole four horsemen of the apocalypse and how it could
Okay.
actually mean the multiple countries that are around Israel. And the countries are Syria, Iran, Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Libya, Palestine, Sudan, Western Sahara, and Kenya. And then I know that Egypt is also in that list. But I started looking at when all of these flags actually started to become popularized. And it seems like it was created back in 1916 by I don't remember the first name, something Sykes, who was part of like the British Parliament that was helping to try to basically create these colors in order to show that it was like their revolt against the Ottoman Empire. So you already had this thing that happened, around 1916, which I'm sure you're kind of getting what I'm hinting at here, where they started laying down this foundation for possibly a future war in the future. So then you think about the aspect of they start using these psychological brainwashing so that they could start tricking people into thinking like, oh, maybe this is something that's existed through time. You could starting to like use their religion against them. So a lot of people are saying like, oh, maybe this lines up because it's supposed to represent the four horsemen. But my suggestion is that it was intentionally placed to be the colors of the four horsemen so that they could use it later on as a facade so that they could push people into a war to actually go and invade these countries later on because 1916, a couple of years after central banking systems started up. And the central banking system, of course, has always had interests over in this area. And it seems like a lot of those countries were the ones they have interest in. So my curiosity was that they set up these colors to start tricking people into thinking that there was something else going on so that they could use it later on to be able to have an excuse to invade these countries under religious means.
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I, they don't need a reason to want to murder their neighbors. Israel is more than happy to not even bother providing any sort of explanation for their crimes against humanity. They just bomb the shit out of Lebanon whenever they feel like it. They they treat everyone like garbage. But I mean, like we have to consider the Albert Pike letter too, right? I mean, if we're gonna really like go back in time and talk about like what did he say? A third world war out of this region wasn't something along those lines, and so
How many quote
um,
prophets have predicted that since the beginning of time, that this would all start as a holy war in the Middle East? And talk about a wrap up. You got also the amplification of the whole Christian movement in the United States. So if you start plastering all these people as the enemy and we have to protect Israel, then what happens next? You have this holy war that everybody's quote been talking about since the beginning of time is World War III. Well, not
yeah.
beginning of time, but since World War II about possibly being the third world war. I mean, it seems like it's one of those things that it's all intentionally lined up. And I kind of had this different idea about predictive programming recently that I think was kind of what's happening with this situation, that a lot of people hear predictive programming and they think that people are literally predicting the future. But another way to kind of break it down is that the whole predictive programming concept, like everybody talking about all the 9/11 stuff, like that was all plastered everywhere before 9/11 happened. It's a matter of putting the concept into people's minds. It's like setting up the dominoes and then waiting for somebody to eventually come up and knock them over. So if you every single time you're talking about New York, for example, you're showing the Twin Towers and every single movie, every single thing, eventually somebody's going to say, "Hey, if I'm going to plan an attack there, then that's clearly the thing to go for." I think with a lot of this stuff, it's a matter of like it's not that they're predicting the future. It's just a matter that they're setting up all these dominoes and they're waiting for people to have the idea implanted in their head enough to say, "Hey, somebody predicted this. We need to make this happen." And it was never predicted. It was just this intentional setup. Like I said, like setting up dominoes and waiting for that person to realize that there's a stack of dominoes set up and waiting for them to tip it over.
It, it's so much easier in retrospect, of course. Looking backwards. Um, I love talking to Ole Damagard about what some of the stuff he was doing, where he was predicting out into the future, extrapolating off of like images from false flag events, and he was looking at them for clues and trying to figure out like where this was headed, and then he was saying, I'm not going to just analyze an event, a bomb that already went off, maybe literally a bomb, uh, but I'm going to say where one is going to be. And he called the Vegas one before it happened, and because he saw the picture of this girl in a shooting like 2 weeks prior, wearing sweatpants, and down the side of her sweatpants it said Las Vegas, and she was just like crying, and he looked at that picture and he went, "There's gonna be a shooting in Las Vegas." 2 weeks later, that shooting. You know? So, like, predictive programming, like if you this is where you get into these writers like Aldous Huxley, like I just mentioned, Brave New World, uh, George Orwell. They're writing about the future, but it's the future that they want to bring about. So they're implanting it in people's minds as the first step towards making it happen. Because these guys are all members of the Committee of 300, like Orwell, Huxley, all the Huxleys, you know, Rhodes, all those guys. And so they're about multi-generational plans. They're about setting a narrative for for the next generation and the generation beyond. So
This is where you
dangerous
kind of get
people.
into some of the occult aspects of like what these people dive into, where I'm always talking about on the show, everybody thinks the occult is like this magic concept, but I really don't think that there's any magic to it whatsoever. It's just a matter of knowing psychology and being able to use it with with philosophy. And the whole manifesting concept is like a prime example. Everybody thinks of that as like a new age concept. Like you manifest, you think of something and it's going to create in front of you. I don't think it's that. I think it's exactly what these writers were doing, like you kind of just mentioned. It's a matter of you set it down and then people will pick it up and then they will start shaping that future. It's not that you manifested it or use any type of magic or anything like that. It's a matter of you put that idea out into the world. So now that that idea is out in the world, there are going to be people that latch onto that idea and start shaping that thing. So again, I think that a lot of these people are using occult philosophy, but not in the magic sense, but in the more literal sense. And this
They
is what the
understand
occult
energy.
is.
They
Exactly.
they understand. They know how this all works. They're putting it out there because they understand, because they can put it out there. They put it out there, and they understand the reasoning why they do it. Yeah, it's all part of the. But you know how to read it because you speak that language. Like, you can understand, you can see the symbolism, and you can see all of that. It's occult, meaning hidden. It's not hidden to you. Like, you've been doing this a while. So, but to everybody else, they don't
Like I
see it.
said, they associate it completely with magic and they try to hide under this facade of they're doing all this stuff that seems really, really woo woo. But the root of it, I don't think any of it's woo woo at all. It's just, again, a matter of knowing some of these sciences and how to manipulate people and use these things in a productive way. And then also, well, not productive, but productive for whatever your agenda is
Yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things. It's like once you see through it, it's kind of hard to like unsee it, but you go crazy because you're pointing at this thing that nobody else sees. And it's like plain as day in front of you.
It's I've always described it as those paintings that you see that are all just a bunch of spots, and you stare at it and you kind of cross your eyes a little bit, and then you go, an elephant. I see it. There's an elephant right in the middle. And you can have someone standing right next to you and they go, I don't see the elephant. And they'll never see the elephant. And that is the best way I can describe it. Once you see the elephant, you can always see the elephant, but not
I mean,
everybody sees it.
that's even kind of going into one thing that people hear all the time when it comes to the occult is they have to say what they're doing, but you can't be aware of what they're saying that they're doing. It's not that magic concept. It's simply the aspect of subconsciously putting stuff into people's minds. Like people aren't reading between the lines. They're putting this magic principle on this concept that's plain as day and straight simple. It's exactly manifesting. You put the idea out, but if you say this is what I want to happen, then people are going to say, nope, I don't want that to happen because you just said that. But if you just put it out in the world, then people will start shaping towards that thing. They have to not be aware of it. That's like you were saying earlier, like you break the programming if you're aware of the programming. You don't fall into the algorithm if you're aware of the algorithm. Like this is exactly the occult concept that people are always hearing about, but they don't see it this real world practical. They again leave it in this woo woo concept, like they're projecting like thoughts into people's heads using magic or
It,
telepathy and stuff like that. But it's a lot
no,
more simple than that. It's
it doesn't.
again
It,
using
it doesn't have to be
psychology.
that. No, it doesn't have to be any of that, right? It's not mind control, MK Ultra. I mean, it could be. I just had Kathy O'Brien on. So it could be that, but it doesn't have to be. Like, your television's controlling your mind. You know what I mean? Like, you walk through Target, you're getting subliminal messages telling you not to steal. I mean, they had that in Kmart in the 80s. You know, I mean, like, buy, don't steal, don't steal. There's like stuff that was subliminal. I mean, so like, it's been around. It's just that now we're in like the Wild West of mind control, because you can't, it used to be like, well, I'll believe it when I see it, right? And now, like, we're in like an AI world, and like the repercussions of that means that, like, you have to you are probably from this point forward always not going to ever be able to say you're 100% sure of anything that you've seen if it was online. It might look good and it might be good, but you're always going to know, like, it's possible that it could be fake.
I
It
mean,
be in it, and as we know, good propaganda isn't 90% lies. It's 5% lies.
at that point, could the whole intention of AI, because a lot of people talk about the fact that it doesn't work as it's intended to, Could the whole push and narrative behind AI could just have been simply to be able to make it so that the one thing that they couldn't control information on, the internet, now they can put a grain of salt in everybody's minds about the fact of, this could be AI created. But now they're getting to the point where, some people can tell it apart, some people can't, but maybe the whole entire ploy of AI was all intended as a propaganda arm to make it so that you couldn't trust anything you found on the internet. Because I mean, at the end of the day, the internet was the loose cannon to them. Like that's what made it so that all these plans weren't able to work, was because people were actually able to
Yeah.
communicate in real time. So what's the best way to counteract that? Make it so that
Poison
nobody
the
can believe
well.
anything. Yep, poison the well. Boom. Like everybody's wondering what the intention is of AI, and again, it's not working as practical as they think it is. Could it have already served its purpose that they intended in the
Sure.
first place? And that's why so much money was invested in it. Wasn't because of the actual operation, but just the ability to be able to manipulate the internet as a whole.
It, that could just be one of the reasons why. I mean, it also softens up people's brains. It removes people's abilities to, you know, work out certain problems. I mean, you can increase productivity. You can also stunt your learning development. I mean, there's some real downside to it. So I don't know. Um,
I mean, I'm already starting to see there's advertisement companies that are basically starting to say, "Oh, on AI, we can start pushing it where the algorithm will start like spotlighting your product and only say good things about your product." So now, of course, like most things, you're going to assume that industry is going to get involved in it. So now AI, we already knew was, biased towards, woke ideology, but now you have to take into consideration that any question that you might ask AI is going to be biased towards whoever is paying the most towards that, which again is inevitable with almost anything. But we finally seem to have hit that point with AI where everybody was questioning, like, hey, can I ask AI what the best of this item is, what the best of this item is? And now we're at the point where it's not pulling from the record of, people on Reddit anymore that are, honestly discussing these things and coming up with the best solutions. Now it's coming up to whoever's paying the most. Boom, their product's gonna be at the top of the list now.
right.
So now any question that you ask, because it seems like now we've gotten to a point where Google, you search something up, the first thing that pops up at the top is an AI overview of whatever you're trying to search. So now,
Yeah.
how many people? I mean, we already have a problem now with like news articles, for example. People read the headlines and they don't actually read the article and realize that, the narrative of the article has been flipped with that headline and it doesn't actually mean what the headline says. Now you're going to have that problem where anybody does any basic Google search, they're going to read the first, here's the highlighted line for you from AI, and then they're not going to even know that they're receiving an biased opinion on something.
That's reality. That's what we've done. We've become like soundbite world, and people see that summarizer right there, and they go, "Yep, that's good enough for me." Boom, got it, understood. Um, and that's a function of AI, right? You can do that with your, you can have it summarize articles. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. I'm not a gadget guy, so I don't try all this stuff out. I know some. I do know some guys. We're building. By the way, we're building just kind of for fun, like the equivalent of like in our virtual garage, I suppose. A large language model that's going to be like super based, um, with all of the 15 years of activist post previous articles fed into it, and books from like people who I know, you know what I mean? Just really give it some context about some stories, and see what we can do with that. I've got some techie guys that are salivating about that opportunity. And so we're working on that. I mean, I just think of it like a super based AI chatbot search engine or whatever, however you want to look at it. But it's like ask type in Oklahoma City and then it brings up all these articles and it brings up all these podcasts and it brings up you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm envisioning. And I'm
It's
not techie. I'm not a programmer or anything like that. I just understand that would be a valuable tool to have, and I've got the content for it now from the activist post acquisition. So
It's like the Brave of AI at that point. You can actually search things and it's not going to give you whatever they want you to see. I
right,
mean, it's definitely something that needs to be created because there has to be a bounce back to whatever they're creating on the other side of this because we're already getting to a point. I mean, kind of bring stuff around back to the eugenesis stuff, to the new Genesis stuff. Um, you're already getting to a point now where even using AI again, people are using these things to communicate, to talk, to feel like they're in a relationship, all of that. So, I mean,
yeah,
just continuing with that, that's also helping with that movement because how many people now are not necessarily going to have an interest of, going out and talking to a female or going out and talking to somebody else because they have the ability to sit at home and have somebody that's going to, you know, sit there and boost up any opinion they have, tell them that they're right, tell them that they're never wrong. And then in the next step, I mean, you get into creating something like the mini Sophie bot. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's only an inevitable amount of time before we end up starting to create robots that people can have relations with that have the AI components already built into them. And
oh
once we
yeah,
get to that point, I mean, isn't that the end goal of a lot of these, new Genesis is make it so people aren't repopulating? I mean, two birds, one stone. You get push on the transhumanism movement, and you also get to do some of the old world, you know, dwindling down the population numbers very easily, all in one swift move.
I just know that when the AI robot fuck dolls come out, they'll come out in Japan first.
Oh, 100%. Because their population needs that, They already have a problem where you remember the
I
virtual headsets when those came out, and then they
I
created that
know.
robot that would actually, pump you while you were watching some of that stuff.
Yeah,
That was the start, it seems, to when their population problems really started. So imagine if they
it's
have
a
a bot that'll
problem.
actually interact with you instead of watching a virtual girl on a headset. Like, oh, dude, Japan is done if that gets created. Like, they're just
I
done.
know. I know. I love Japan. I was there last year. It was fantastic. But yeah, they they love robots. I mean, they're early adapters in porn and robots. And when you have porn robots, I mean, I
I had
gotta
an anime
think.
haircut to one of them, and dude, the deal's done.
Yeah.
There's already
Yeah, man.
families getting ruined over pillows over there that have anime
I
girls on them.
know.
So I
I
mean,
saw that. It's very sad and very weird, and I don't understand the anime stuff, but I do think that they're th I goof at that stuff, but the rest of Tokyo, awesome. Just awesome. Just and our dollar goes so far over there. It's like getting in a 30-year time machine as far as prices for everything. It's great.
dude, that's why they all come and do business over here. They just bring it back and it goes way farther. That's why you hear about this, typical motif of the rich Japanese businessmen. It's probably really
Dude,
easy to convert it from American dollars to Japanese dollars and make a
dude.
pretty penny.
We were there last April and just perfect timing. We were getting 155 yen to the dollar. Uh, so we were like, we just went out. We were like, what's trying to do the math in our heads. And it was like, like go down for a nice sit down lunch, chicken teriyaki, soup, salad, rice, drink, all that. $5, $6. It's like, damn,
Dude,
like
they,
it's
they got something set up over there,
just a
man.
nice break for once. We just kept saying that the whole time. We're like, it's just nice to feel like you're not getting ripped off every time you go out.
I feel like it'd be nice just to have a quick change of actually going to a city and actually seeing it, not littered with trash and shit on the streets. Like
Beautiful
literal
city
shit.
too. Yeah, no, Tokyo, nobody was having a mental health break. I didn't hear nobody was honking their car horns. Didn't see trash anyway. That's the problem. There are no trash cans. You have to like walk around with your trash like until you get home. I had like plastic water bottle in my back pocket for like 3 hours. I could not find a trash can. But I'm telling you, like when you go to a place like that and everything's organized, you just appreciate it. Everything works well, everything lines up properly. Uh and they do things like way better, and you go, oh, why don't we do it that way? Like it just, I don't know, man. It's simultaneously a great place to go, but also makes you very frustrated because you feel like we could do all of this if we weren't wasting our money and time on bullshit like wars all over the place and high speed rail trains that Gavin Newsom's trying to build in California that haven't gone anywhere. I mean, we squander our money on such pointless, ridiculous stuff. And
Japan is what the
meanwhile,
US could be if
Tokyo's just
Tesla wasn't
kicking
repressed.
ass. You know?
Japan is
So,
exactly what the US would be if Tesla actually didn't get repressed.
right. You're right, right, right. Yeah.
Like, I guess kind of starting to wrap up towards the end, but I wanted to bring this up with you because this is something that popped up today, and I don't know how much you've seen about this, but have you heard about the shooting that happened in at the Christian school? I think that was today, right? If I'm not mistaken, or within the last
Yeah.
couple days.
Catholic school.
Catholic school. Yep.
Yeah. I did. I saw that today. Yeah. By some trans shooter.
Did you see the clips where they had all the different things written on them?
Yes.
Dude, the second I saw that, dude, all I see is like this was set up. Like I don't. This seems like the same scare tactics that they're always using. Especially what sealed the deal for me was the fact that they had a picture. It was one of the few that I got released that had something messed up written on almost every single one of the clips. Something along the lines of like, "Where's your God now? I'm coming for you, kids." Stuff like that on there. Second I saw that, dude, complete setup. Like there is no way in my mind that that wouldn't be the photo that would be one of the ones that they wouldn't release if it wasn't some type of an operation. Not to mention the fact that of course you have the typical motif when it comes to a lot of these shootings lately. And I was just waiting for the attack when they were going to do it to some type of Catholic or Christian or something that's in that field schools. But dude, like I'm sure you probably have a different mindset on this, but dude, all I can see is psyop on this one.
I would keep your eyes open for shoes and bikes.
They're claiming that there's a manifesto, so there's another one. But the
Of
question is, are
course,
we going to
there's
see
a
the manifesto?
There's
Always
always
a
a
manifesto.
manifesto. There's always a manifesto when you're setting up a psychological operation. This is low. I mean, I don't know. We'll watch how it plays out. We'll see what the narrative is. But it feels like an op, and it we're starting to fill up our bingo card with a lot of trans shooters. Not that I'm surprised because, I think that the drugs that they give these poor kids are really screws them up. And I don't think they're thinking straight to begin with if they think that they're born in the wrong body. And, and I don't want to pretend to know what's going on in their heads. But if you're a boy and you want to be a girl and you're ready to like transition, you're already not well, if we're being honest. You're
But you can't
already
address it that
not
way because
well.
instead it just gets solidified rather than saying, all right,
Yeah.
like what's the trauma that caused you to feel that way? Like there's a reason why a man wants to feel like a girl, and it more often than not seems to be related to some type of childhood sexual trauma with a lot of this
Y-
stuff.
Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that they're all gonna be shooters, but it's not you're not in a good place if you're thinking of changing genders. You're just not, and you're about to make a permanent decision about a temporary feeling, and this is no tattoo that you're going to regret. This is permanent, never ending, life altering, body scarring Frankenstein shit, man. I just, I don't know. I mean, I 6 times more likely to kill themselves, 3 times more likely to wind up in prison, bounce around jobs, 20% don't work, never worked. I mean, this is not a recipe for success.
I mean, it kind of pushes in the whole transhumanism agenda because I've thrown this idea
It
a few
does.
times that if you've manipulated your body so much in the physical reality that you are now uncomfortable in your body and all you ever wanted to do was become the opposite gender, and somebody comes along one day and says, "Hey, you can go into this virtual reality and you can be the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life." Then how many people that have gone through this stuff are going to take that opportunity and basically choose to live within this system just because of the fact that they can quote feel like their true selves?
It's a lot of people that are missing something, and they're seeking it, and they're getting rewarded. The reward system is very wonky right now. The trans agenda is being normalized and promoted and elevated, and you have to ask why. Why at all, but why now? You know, why is it being and aggressively being pushed, like shoved down your throat, like you're like, say you love the trans movement or I'll kill you. You know what I mean? Wild shit and flags everywhere and parades and pride. And you just look at it and I just go like, this feels like an op.
Just the fact that Disney is intended simply to be, kids media, and they
Yeah.
are one of the hardest pushers for that stuff, where almost any grocery store you go to, they have a section set up where it's a bunch of Disney stuff that's in rainbow colors. It's like,
Oh yeah,
all right, you don't see a problem with that? The fact that
kids
it's
love
sexuality
rainbows.
mixed with a child's thing?
Yeah, I see the problem, but Disney is, you know, well, it's Disney. They have a dark history. You know what I mean? Like they're not free from sin for their past. But I don't know. How
Seems
do
like
we
we've
want
gotten
to?
to the point where are you familiar with the Universe 25 experiment?
No.
So basically, the concept was back in the 70s, this guy created this rat utopia. And the whole intention was if everybody has everything that they need, what would eventually end up happening to the society? And as many times as you set up this experiment, the same results would end up happening, which basically resulted in people not having a place in society. And in turn, they end up secluding themselves, sectioning off themselves to the point where he would notice that the female rats would sit up at high points and they would constantly just groom themselves. The male rats would basically just exist amongst the male rats and they would stop caring about grooming or taking care of themselves anymore. And you just see this straight correlation that happens with society that we're happening with now, which everybody talks about this whole aspect that societies tend to crumble after we start getting into this gender ideology. But what I think is that just like this experiment kind of suggests, is that once you reach a point with a society that you quote reach a utopia in the aspect of everybody has, for the most part, the basic necessities that they need, then you get to a point where people start losing their role in society, and in turn they end up going crazy and trying to fill these other gaps and trying to fill that empty hole with other things, and in turn society will collapse from this. And what I'm thinking is that it's not necessarily that it always gets injected in. I'm sure that they've seen this enough times that at a certain point it starts getting injected in, but I think inevitably society will continuously get to this point. Like even if we have a reset tomorrow and everything goes great, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, once we reach that utopian point again where everybody has what they need, then people will start falling into a point where they don't know where they fit in with society, and eventually society will start collapsing on itself again. And I think this guy ended up conducting this experiment pretty good amount of times. I think it was like in the 20s or 30s, and it inevitably ended the same way every single time. And it seems like we're essentially lining up this experiment with mainstream society now.
Yeah, I wonder about UBI as well, and what that does to the reward mechanism in the brain, when people are getting money for nothing and they're chicks for free and they're not having to uh, do anything for it. And where is their place in society? And some people don't care.
Some
But
people don't even have passions anymore. Like, I mean, you talk about the Star Trek concept that everybody has what they need, but people have a passion that they want to do, which is what makes society continue on. And it seems like now, how many people do you ask? And it's like nobody has hobbies anymore. Nobody really has a passion anymore. Like, we're getting to a point where, like, maybe we could potentially get to a Star Trek future. I mean, whatever the specifications might be of that, but without people having their motivation to do good, to explore, to expand, then what are we even doing here? You know, that type of society wouldn't work unless people still
Yeah.
have those passions and drives to do something for the sake of knowledge, or do something for the sake of exploration, or simply do something for the sake of discovery, you know?
Yeah. You I mean, what would you do if you didn't have to work?
Honestly, probably read, write, research, do podcasts, try to talk about all this type of stuff. Like, I
Right.
mean, honestly, if I didn't have to work a normal job, then this would probably become my job because this is what I enjoy doing. But that would
Right.
still give me like direction. I feel like a lot of people wouldn't have that. So
Yeah.
they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They inevitably probably just sit around playing video games and just not conducting anything or contributing anything to society at that point.
Have you ever lost a job? Because I have.
Oh yeah.
Uh, uh, and you go home and you're like, and it's awesome for like
3
3 days.
weeks. 3 weeks
And
tops.
then, and then it's like, I gotta do something. Like I gotta answer my pants. So, um, I would need to, that's kind of how I feel too. My answer would be the same. I'm doing what I'm doing. If it was, this is what I do now for a living, right? Writing books and podcasts and activist post and natural blaze and um other stuff that I've got. My oh dude, I didn't tell you. I should send you this. My I'm a co-owner of a sports media company, media training company. And
Is that the same one that you used to work for before with, like, the NBA and stuff?
yeah. And my partner, my business partner, my co-owner was on Hard Knocks this week, the Buffalo Bills. Um, have you ever watched Hard Knocks? Are you a football fan at all?
I'm more of a hockey guy more than anything.
Okay, but you know what Hard Knocks
Yeah, but
is,
I
right?
know what
Like
it
the
is,
behind
yeah.
the scenes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the training camp, and they had like they did a 3 minute segment showing my partner working with doing improv with these guys, but doing like Josh Allen, MVP of the league last year, quarterback, just having fun with them, and it got I got word of it. From a buddy of mine was like, dude, you guys got some love on HBO, and I was like, what, really? Let me see. I watched it, and I was like, it was good. My partner's brilliant. He's brilliant.
So you got so much, you got your foot in a little bit of everything, man, I swear.
Yeah, yeah. But again, like I don't run that. I don't run the day to day operations of that. I did. I moved the company to Florida and opened a division in Florida and did all that. But that was 20 years ago. So, and we've been doing this for a long time. 24. I started in 2001. I started right after 9/11.
Do you think, I guess kind of somewhat of a closing question before we get into the point 5 episode, just out of curiosity, like, did your mind already kinda work in this conspiratorial, philosophical, psychological aspect before you did that aspect of, trying to help people with being able to present themselves to the media? Because I feel like doing that would probably be a pretty good opening door to how easily a lot of these psychological tricks would work. Simply, the one that you told me a long time ago about the guy who was really uncomfortable in front of camera, and all he had to do was put a basketball in his hand. And then all of a sudden he felt
Yeah.
comfortable because he felt like he had, one, something psychological, something between him and the camera. So he felt like there was a barrier. And two, just something he could play with to feel comfortable. But after doing stuff like that, did you notice that it opened the door for you a lot with a lot of these psychological aspects of what their mainstream media is trying to do to people, and all these different like tricks and conspiracies, and just open the door for a lot of this stuff?
Well, I could see them. I could see them doing the tricks. I could watch them talking in a certain manner. I could watch it. I knew what to look for. So if it's like watching a magician when you know how they do all the tricks, it's like it's a different thing. So, and that's what we would teach our guys. I mean, it would just be like, you've got to you've got to look at this from the media's perspective. That really was where I learned my distrust of the media. Um, I had, you know what? There's actually, since we were talking about it, I had this Canadian director, T. Snyder, following me around from in Mexico, from an Acapulco to Nashville to Denver, uh, to Pueblo, and the angle, and he was doing a mini documentary, and it just came out, so it's out and you can watch it. But he hit the angle he took that he wanted to take with it was exploring my sports background, where I came from, and so, but he, he was here, he was in my office. I mean, he was filming over my shoulder, filming everything, and I took him to a Rockies game, and explained to him like what I had done with sports and where that came from. But that's where my distrust from the media came, because we're working with these unsophisticated young athletes, they're pleasers, and give they want to be open with these media guys, and we're just trying to spare them the misery of thinking that one of these guys is your friend and saying something that you kind of think is off the record and it's not, and then it's the front page of the sports section, then you look like an asshole, and then coach thinks you're talking shit about him behind his back, just bad. So, I mean, and the media has no problem doing that to these kids
Oh
at
yeah,
all. They
easy
don't
easy
care.
to manipulate because I mean they trick them into those positions.
Totally. They lull them into a false sense of security, think that they are broing out with them, get them to say something, wait one day, and then boom.
What
It's,
do you think about
so
that player on your team that always misses the pass? What do you think about your
yeah,
coach? And then they're like, they got these
yeah,
headlines that are just like, oh yeah, this person is a complete shit player, and that's the headline now because they
yeah,
got him off the
yeah,
record, like because they bought him out to dinner real quick, like, oh, let's have a dinner, let's just chat.
yeah. So we when you that's my perception of the media. They're diabolical shitheads and should never be trusted at all under any circumstances. That goes for sports media as well. That's just my baseline. There are some that are better. There are some that aren't bad. Let me be clear. But, you know, I'm now in the media with Activist Post. So, you know, I have like a duty and responsibility to make sure that that we've got our stuff straight. Like I actually do care about my reputation, unlike the mainstream corporate whore press.
I was gonna
Does
say you're
not.
not paid off, so big pharma, yeah, don't print that story, no problem.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we get aggressive over at Activist Post. We talk about the real stuff.
Well, I guess talking about real stuff, that can definitely link into what we're going to get into in the point 5 episode for anybody that wants to come and check that out over on the Bizarre Reality Media Patreon. But before we wrap up this episode, of course, I always have to make you leave with some words of wisdom for the listeners. So if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners today, because I know that you're absolutely full of them, what might it be today?
Oh boy. Well, um I'm working on a new book. And this is more of like words of wisdom to myself, like there's something to be said for persistence, because I've started and stopped this book on 3 different occasions, and I kind of like have it's a running joke in my house, because um, my answer to something once before was like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you write a book? One paragraph at a time. And sometimes it's just so overwhelming, because I've been assembling, and not just necessarily writing, but just assembling everything together. And it's sometimes it's just uh you know, it's so overwhelming. I just have to remind myself, like, just do one section at a time, right? Don't think, right. But if I allow myself to kind of pull back and look at the massiveness of it all, it's no bueno. I
I
need to
mean,
like stay focused on the task at hand and just grind away like I've been doing every day, a little bit, grind away, keep going, more. And then you eventually get there. And then when it's done, I I'm I'm not writing for a while.
I mean, that's some pretty good universal words of wisdom for a lot of people because I see this all the time, even at work every day, doing these like production type tasks. People will look at the whole job as a whole and they'll freak out and feel like they're not able to do it. But it's a matter of knowing how to compartmentalize and section things off to hit one little
Yep.
piece at a time to build up to that bigger project. Because
Yep.
the big project isn't just one swift move and it's over, it's a bunch of little components that build up to something bigger. So, any project you're trying to do, whether it's a podcast, writing a book, doing a task at work, whatever it is, break that big thing down into smaller components and start working at those piece by piece to build up to that bigger foundation of what you're trying to work at. Like that's some pretty good universal words of wisdom to realistically any project that you're working on.
Thanks. I just thought of it.
Hey, worked perfect, man. I got to put you on the spot. And you've already, of course, mentioned Activist Post. You've already, of course, mentioned your books and macroaggressions. If anybody wanted to come and find all of the awesome research, all the awesome work, and all the awesome content you're putting out there, man, where can everybody come and find all of your stuff?
Macroaggressions.io is the best place because there's everything, the books, the podcasts, and the news sites. We've got Activist Post and Natural Blaze podcast. We've got Macroaggressions Union of the Unwanted, which we did a great one on Monday night with a director panel and talked about getting financing and distribution and things like that. That episode is a banger. And I also do a show called Day Zero, which we call a comedy show for legal reasons. And
If it's satire, you can say whatever you want, right?
holy moly, man! We're about to hit our 200th episode next on Sunday, so that'll be cool. That's day zero. You've been warned in advance. Sorry, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. And for all the listeners that enjoy the conversation, make sure you guys stick around to check out the Point Five. And if not, then I guess I will catch you guys on the next one. And Charlie, I appreciate you as usual for always coming on the show, sharing your knowledge, and laying out all the awesome information for the listeners, man.
Thank you.